We're ready, good to go. All right, welcome back everybody. Thank you so much for coming in and separating yourself from that espresso machine. I know it's been a hard slog this morning, getting up when it's freezing cold. My name is Warren Bingham. I'm the Executive Chairman of MedTech International and also have the privilege of being the Chair of Syndicate 47. Part of my day-to-day activity and role is I have the privilege of chairing a number of very disruptive and innovative companies in the space of medtech, life science, food tech, and agri-tech. And so when I was recently invited to speak on AI, it was quite a shock when I got there at the conference on stage and then found myself talking about artificial insemination. So when we talk about productivity, we could talk about pregnant cows or sheep, or we could talk about maybe some of the more relevant things that we've got here today and the topic of today. But so for your benefit and for the benefit of our panel, I can tell you that we are talking about artificial intelligence this morning. Okay, so the format is we're going to have a fireside chat. Just imagine we have a beautiful open fire sitting in front of us. Works safe, wouldn't let us put one on the stage, but anyway. We're going to talk for around 20-25 minutes, and after that, we are going to have Q&A. So if you have any questions that come to mind, write them down, and then we're going to get Cookie to run around, and we're going to time him how quick it takes to get one question over here to the other side of the room. And if he doesn't do it in less than 20 seconds, he has to do 100 push-ups on stage. All right, Cookie? Where are you? He's disappeared. He's run out the room.
He's done a runner.
Okay. All right. So let me frame, I guess, the context of the discussion. And I read an article yesterday, and admittedly it was on LinkedIn, but it was a very relevant article by Mark Degley. And the title of it was that your employees are using AI. The real risk is pretending they aren't. And his article goes on by saying that they're using it to write emails, summarize meetings, review contracts, and turn 12 chaotic bullet points into something resembling a strategy. Management may insist this isn't happening because the business hasn't adopted an AI policy officially. He says that's adorable. It's like announcing your workplace doesn't have a gambling problem because you haven't installed a roulette table in the kitchen. AI adoption doesn't begin when the board approves a strategy. It begins when someone discovers that they can avoid spending Friday afternoon writing a report. The technology isn't the immediate problem. The problem is that nobody knows what information is being entered, which tools are being used, and whether the input is being checked. A well-meaning employee posts a client contract into a free AI platform. Someone uploads a payroll data because they want help creating a spreadsheet. Another person asks a chatbot about to draft a legal advice and confidently forwards the answer because it used headings. Now, this business has unintentionally created an AI governance program. Unfortunately, the program is called Everything Do Whatever You Want. Completely banning AI isn't the answer either. So, what is the answer? Speak. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a wonderful panel here, and joining me on stage is Maurice McCarthy. He's the CEO of Virtual IT Group. Sitting next to him is Aaron Cunnington. He is a member of the Best Syndicate in Australia, and also the CEO and founder of Antares Solutions. You've already heard from her before, but Katia Forbes is a well-accomplished and experienced customer experience expert, as well as an author, so we heard earlier. So wonderful to have you here, Katia.
Good.
And
Everybody.
Jason Laguerre, sitting on the end, but not to be left last, is our guest joining us as CEO of Hotline IT. So wonderful, ladies and gentlemen, give it up. So we've had lots of uplifting and maybe not so uplifting conversations this morning. We've heard that we're working harder and yet we're not increasing productivity. We've seen that from a macro scale and down to and relating that to our each individual businesses. Where do we start? How does an organisation, how do 200 CEOs and business leaders think about integrating AI? What are some of the starts that we need to be thinking about?
I think
Jason?
there's been a lot of talk about leadership, rightly so, and we'll talk about data and we'll get into data. But leadership isn't just about defining the strategy. And I think thinking about AI as a tool and an efficiency technology allows your staff also to be leaders. So leaders will be in your business whether they're the CEO or not. And I think that aside from a strategy, which is very, very important, leaders need to understand that your staff are going to use AI regardless. They're going to use it because it's very cost effective, there's a low barrier to entry, and it's within their credit limits, it's within their authority matrix to just sign on to something. And so I think that what we're seeing with businesses that are quite successful at managing it is the leaders drive a culture of innovation, a culture of encouraging AI use, and they bring it out into the open. They don't push it out into the corners. They don't say, they don't discourage the use, they don't warn everybody. They actually encourage people to promote and advise what have you used it for, and at least you're getting the information and you can then start to govern it. So one of the things that I would suggest is not only have constructive strategy conversations about your 1 year and your 3 year goals, but also drive a culture of innovation and curiosity to use it as well.
Thanks, Jason. Maurice and Aaron, some of the research says that some organisations have over 300 systems in place, integrated, yet 15% of them are actually managed by the IT department or by the IT team. You want to talk a bit about that?
Sure, I can kick off and Aaron, you can jump in. I think when you enter into any organisation, I think we've all absolutely seen this, it's no longer IT sole responsibility in terms of the technology that exists in our company. I think to Dean's presentation earlier on, and two of my own team, or my CMO, my Chief Product Officer, using Monday.com in terms of the tools that we have. I think a kind of SaaS-based providers who all of our executives know that tools and systems and platforms that's going to make them effective. And I think there's good reason for that. We know we want to be agile, we know we want to be nimble, we know we want to go to market fast, we want to compete in what's usually, in all of our industries, a pretty competitive landscape. So I think in terms of those systems that aren't integrated, that are managed, and you create shadow IT and shadow AI, I think it comes really clear to why. And then you end up with so many systems that are not integrated, up to 50% in many, many cases that don't become integrated. And then obviously all the issues and challenges that's going to create for any organisation, be that tech debt, be that in terms of disparate data systems, we talked about that today, and then you can't get the context and the insights to drive your organisation correctly. And then the one, for those of you that don't know me, I come from Optus in a previous life. You think about security and the challenges that creates in terms of when your systems aren't and you don't understand in terms of the disparate landscape that you're existing. So I think it's easy to understand how we got there in terms of SaaS, complexity, ease integrating, cost, why, the agility side of it, but then being really clear in terms of the issues that can create and the risks that can create for you.
Aaron, you go into businesses every day.
Yep.
What are you seeing when you go into someone and they say, hey, we need help? What does that look like?
So, I mean, a common thing you were saying with the SaaS platforms, we're also going from buying a SaaS platform that multiple people can use to BYO AI, which is creating more of a problem. A lot of the times when you have three categories of people that we usually work with, and usually it's the same in our business as well, which was we've got the early adopters, you've got the people that are copying and pasting data into their ChatGPTs and their Claude, they're using their AI tools, they're the ones that they know what the problem is, they know how they want to solve it, and they know the tools, and they're already doing it with the third-party tools that they're putting on their own credit card and they're using, and the data's going outside of it. So they're the ones that we really want to enable. We want to make sure that we are helping them by enabling them and encouraging them to do that with the right tools in place for the organisation. The second group of people are the people that think they know what the problem is that they can solve with AI. They're just not exactly sure where it is. So they're the ones that we put into that group to go, we know that you're going to be on board, we can help you, we can train you, we can get the right tools in place. And then the third group of people is the people that they know about AI, they just don't know how it applies to them, and they really don't have the time to think about it, or they're not really caring about it because I've got a job to do today. So they're the group of staff that the opportunity is to help grow and get the most out of the productivity. And doing that by saying, instead of saying, here is an AI tool, doing it by saying, here is a solution to a problem that you need to work on a daily basis. So, we see that part of, if you can harness the first group, who are the people that already know how that they want to solve the problem, they're already using those tools, get them onto a corporate, governed, controlled, talking about the governance piece. You want to make sure that you're providing that opportunity to your staff, but doing it in a controlled fashion. So, by the time you allocate them into those groups and you can work out how do I enable those people? They're going to be your champions. They're the ones that you want to make sure that are doing it. The second group will be pulled along by what they see of these people doing, and you train them and you get the adoption around what does AI mean to them. And then the third group is, don't talk to them about AI. This is not, I don't want you to become a prompt engineer. Here is a tool that's helping you do your job. And if we can provide that tool that is using AI, then they've got the benefit of being more productive. That's helping the productivity of them by enabling them to do their jobs, easier and faster. And they're the common themes that we see. It's the theme that we had in our business. We made assumptions around, we're a 60-person tech business. When we rolled out, we had a Copilot early adopter program. We were like, surely everyone's going to be using this, and the adoption was just not there. And you realise that you have to change the mindset of going, we've got a few people who are driving it, and then the rest are just busy doing their jobs. They'll work out tomorrow how they're going to apply this technology to them, and then tomorrow is the next day from there. So it's making sure it's people-led, the strategy around why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and then how do we bring the people on that journey to get them across the line to say, it's not about AI, it's about here's a tool that's going to be better than the tool you were using yesterday to allow you to do your job properly from there. So it's the moving away from an AI conversation to a how do we help you be more effective in your day-to-day. That's sort of loosely from there.
Katia, apparently half of the people using AI at work, 7 out of 10 say that it's halving their work productivity. But on the flip side, half the people don't get access to it. So it's quite an interesting quandary. I mean, those stats to me don't make any sense. But what it tells me is that some people are getting benefits. Pardon?
It's a genuine problem, and particularly in regulated industries. I've just come out of a global bank, and the ability to access anything meaningful from an AI perspective was really glacially slow.
Wow.
The glacier looked impatient, actually, compared to how fast regulated industries are moving in terms of how they're using AI. But in listening to the other answers that people were giving there, I think there's this common thread of uncertainty. And if people are not using the tools necessarily in work, I think it does come down to that uncertainty about maybe where to start, what the right thing to point this amazing enabling technology at is, from a solution perspective. And in order to help people to start to embrace that more, some of the work that I've done with large organisations, I just came back from Stuttgart recently where I worked with the leaders of Mercedes-Benz, who were saying, we're not entirely sure where we're pointing our people in this way and how might we do this better. If you look at ways that you use AI in an organisation, there's 3 that a lady called Nufar Gaspar has identified, which I love the framing of. One is the tokens that you're spending on learning to use the tool, getting certainty, getting confidence, trying things. Some work, some don't work, but you always get learning out of those. And that's the token spend that you really want to protect. Then there's the token spend, which is around the making the process better, or doing something that we already do faster, better, cheaper, more efficiently. And with that, you want to make sure that you're really tuning it, like really fine-tuning how you do that and how you spend those tokens in your organisation. And then there's starting to help people identify the things that Nufar calls spin, which is just using AI for dumb reasons to get no particular benefit. and then just like pruning that completely out of the way that your people operate. But because a lot of our senior leaders are not hands-on, I don't know, how many CEOs do you know who've gone and built themselves an AI agent using OpenClaw hands-on the weekend?
Let's ask the audience. How many people in the room?
Who here has built? So we've got a few.
A few. 15?
Yeah.
20?
So
10%?
this is a 2-hour job. This is a 2-hour job that you can do on the weekend using an AI platform to tell you how to do it step by step. And going through that process, you then learn, okay, how does this whole thing hang together? How does an agent function? What happens with the brain that's the model behind it? And that sort of learning gives confidence to people. So I think that people are not using it, number one, because they don't necessarily get access to it, and organizations need to get better at providing people with tools. From constraint, though, can come creativity. When I was in the bank, we had access to VS Code and not a great iteration of Copilot. Yet still, I said to the team, you've got to disrupt yourselves before somebody comes and does it to you. Because if somebody's coming to do it to you, they're coming with knives. And it will be unpleasant. So get yourself in a situation where you can show what you can do. And even with just those 2 tools, they're able to actually get in place an agentic workflow that is able to start doing product design and development with code that's 99% production ready. So there's a bunch of tools and techniques that you can give people. You can say, absolutely, let's be innovative. But okay, the way to be innovative is form a hypothesis about what you believe to be true about your solution. Figure out what bet you can make in market that will give you measurable results when you test it as an experiment to say whether or not you're going to keep on working with it or you're not going to keep on working with it.
We heard earlier that 3 pillars Dean gave us in regards to some of the things we could do. Where does it start in an organisation? How do you start this process? We're in a world where, as with this, the data well and truly says, that most organisations are using it but don't have a lot of control. Efficiency is really out the door, and work productivity is reducing, but the workload's increasing. Morris, where does it start? What have we got to stop doing?
I think one of the key components that we got to stop doing and where do we start is, and a number of the speakers spoke about today, is right across the leadership team. I think Kathy put it perfectly in terms of it really kind of cascades from the top down. When you think of the strategy and the productivity you're trying to gain, as we talked about today, where are those gains going to come from? Where are the efficiencies going to come from? Do you actually understand your business in terms of where you can apply this technology? In Virtual IT Group, we look at our service desk on a continuous basis, and I love some of the examples that came today. Where can I drive better productivity? But not just for the gain for my organization, but the gain for our customers as well. So we started looking at the automation that we can create at the lowest level service tickets. That's great for an internal organization like a service provider, but more importantly, it creates a much better experience for my end users, because they're the people creating the tickets that come into the service desk. So if they're looking to onboard an employee and I have an agent that can do that end to end within minutes, if I can do that safely for that experience both for the HR representative, like you talked about today as one of the use cases, for the employee that's been onboarded directly to the organization, that experience creates a competitive edge for us because we're creating a great experience for my end user as a customer. The second thing it allows us to do is to understand in terms of where can I reinvest that money back into my organization? Right. Can I put it back into the next level of product and services? But that defines at the start in terms of the strategy. Mm-hmm. The strategy that we're trying to launch across our organization is using the technology to drive continuous improvement. We want to drive continuous improvement for our customers. And again, we're going to do that through the technology that exists today. Help them define their data in a way and create the data sets. It doesn't need to be perfect, but unlock the potential for themselves. But then also, internally, how do we drive continuous improvement for our organization? What are the tools, what are the systems, how do we give access to the AI across the organization to ensure that we're delivering that benefit that then they can put back into the customer experience? To me, that's what ultimately will then unlock the growth. Unlock the growth through obviously the efficiencies we drive, but most importantly, if you're truly a customer value-led organization, you're going to see how that technology, how the AI is going to unleash a new experience for your customers that's going to allow them to develop, allow them to grow, particularly in my organization where you're B2B. Right. Because our job is to make sure that those customers are successful, that their technology roadmaps are set up in a way that allows them to unlock their full potential. So how does our continuous improvement internally unlock their, and that's where the strategy starts at. But to Kelty's point of view, it starts from our leadership side of it. Where are we going to make the difficult decisions? What's our level of investment, and where are we putting those investments? To us, we put that right at the pointy edge of that's going to have the biggest impact to our customers.
Thanks, Morris. Jason, systems talking to systems. That seems to be a problem statement right now.
It is, but the solution is the same as the problem. So AI is the solution to that. In terms of the conversation around, and I'll get to that, but in terms of the conversation about where do we start? You could drive the culture and the strategy at the same time. This is moving way too fast for people to be linear about this. You have to do all these things at the same time. You can do enablement, you can do training, you can provide tools, you can do use cases, you can do pilots, you can do all these things whilst you're also building a strategy. But you have to do it deliberately, right? Which is that leadership piece. Whatever you're doing, it's got to be deliberate. In terms of systems and data, a Gartner model talks about the data being the first barrier. So the first roadblock to being able to implement AI is you have to have the data. AI relies on data, right? So there's no point asking it a question it doesn't know the answer to, it doesn't have access to. You can use tools though to build those systems, and they are very fast. And then the second barrier is leadership. So those two things go hand in hand. You've got to you've got to enable, you've got to have that culture and enable your whatever tools you're using in your business, whatever you want to adopt, to do that. The other thing that was on my mind that I might not get a chance to say is the presentation. When you looked at the winners and the losers on the board, I'm going to use the word losers, there was a big trend in that for me. One side was looking at business transformation and looking at ways to improve things. The other side was looking at cost minimisation or a cost reduction. That's a losing strategy. If you go into AI thinking, how can I save money? You miss the point. This is going to change the way we work. It's going to change the way we provide services and products to our customers. So that's the culture piece I refer to, and the piece that I think, my opinion, is that the businesses that are getting the most traction and are really doing this well understand how can I use this technology to provide better services, maybe more cost effectively, but it's a better service. For example, if your current business only operates 9 to 5 or 8 to 6 or 7 to 7, how could AI make you a 24-hour business?
Yeah. Do we have any examples of committed case studies of corporations who've really gone deep into investing into AI, integrating it organisation? Do you have any examples randomly you wanted to share, come to mind?
We're doing a bit of work with NRMA and enabling them from an AI perspective. And what we found with them, again, taking it from a small problem, and the problem was very much, we need to solve this problem. We're not going big bang. We weren't talking AI. It was here's the problem that we need to make better. Yeah. So that once that first piece rolled out, and then the rest of the organisation, the people that were working with it were going, actually that's pretty cool, and that has made my day a lot easier. In those small projects that are productionised, not proof of concept, the investment is made to go, this is a real solution. So where, again, the underlying problem has not changed. It is, you've still got to have your data connected, you've still got to have your people behind you, you've got to have the process, all the automation piece in there. But for them to do that, and then they've gone, well, actually I can solve that problem over here now. And that has just spread like wildfire through the business, because they're going, I can see how this is now going to solve that problem. And they're not big problems that we're solving. There's lots of little ones that are getting more complex, but the adoption, because the people have gotten on board and they've realised that this is how it can actually help me in my day-to-day. And again, I'm not having to be a prompt engineer, leave the engineers to do that. I'm just trying to do my job. That had, from the work that we're doing with customers, that approach, getting real proof of value and seeing it work in a production environment that has been given the attention from the business to go, I'm giving you the funding, I'm giving the approval, and I'm encouraging it, sees the success, move on from there.
Yeah. Katya?
Yeah, so I'm seeing this a lot in procurement. This is a place where a lot of organisations are starting to use AI as a negotiator. As something that can actually, drive down the prices that they're paying on things. A really cool example of this is Maersk. So the big shipping company. Yep. Maersk uses an AI platform to negotiate for trucking space on land before the shipping containers have even reached the port. So from a logistical, removing friction from their logistical supply chain, they're getting incredible benefits out of that, both from the container gets on a truck straight away, but they're also able to negotiate, better pricing, better outcomes from them from a business perspective, using AI as a negotiating tool. And there are a lot of companies now using AI as a negotiating tool. Walmart is a really great example of it. They use AI as a negotiating tool with all of their suppliers. AstraZeneca, Honeywell, there's a lot of organisations now embracing that. So if you respond to RFPs in any organisation, you are likely to be starting to respond to an AI.
Is there anybody in the room from Sanofi? Whew, good.
What are you going to say?
No, not at all. But it's close to my space. Doing a little bit of research using AI, as you do, I discovered that Sanofi Pharmaceuticals, a French pharmaceutical company, multinational, have invested over $500 million integrating AI throughout their entire organisation. Wow. They use it for manufacturing.
Yep.
They use it for drug discovery. They use it for finance and budget control. They made a conscious decision at a leadership level, and clearly big budgets and big pockets, but they determined that if they did it piecemeal around the world in all the different jurisdictions, that in fact it's going to cost them more than what their investment would be. That was the thesis of their investment. Now, what you can't get, even using AI, is the byproduct of that. What's the output? How has it done? Is it on path for return on investment? Was it going to be a good decision? No one quite knows yet. It's too early to tell. But it's impressive to see a very successful multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical company invest and make such a significant decision. And gosh, I would have loved to have been in the board table with that discussion. Not leading it, by the way, just listening to it. Okay, we're going to open up for discussions. Anybody want to give Cookie a bit of a run for his money across the room? Anyone got any questions? Hands? Over here. Off you go, Cookie.
We turn the mic up, please. Thank you. Just state where you're from and your name, please.
Chris Lawler, Syndicate 63. How secure is AI?
That's a really big question. Can we give that some context?
Well, we've all got confidential financial data. We've got intellectual property, formulations, whatever is in your portfolio mix.
Yeah. Okay. So
if we're going to put it into a ChatGPT or a Claude or whatever, how do we protect the data, and how do we know it's not going to disappear off into a data centre somewhere or end up where it shouldn't?
We start with the first obvious part of that, which is, let's assume that your staff are using it and doing it. It's far safer to put it into an AI you control with a culture that you encourage and disclosure and transparency than it is for them to put it into a free or a personal account that they've created because your culture doesn't support it. So as a starting point, let's say, depending on what statistics you look at, 90% of people in your business are using AI, 57% of them are using an AI that's not approved by your business. So let's start that security conversation with, are you resisting and forcing people to do it themselves, or are you encouraging and bringing it under your umbrella to manage? That's the first thing.
Yeah, the human is always going to be the biggest problem in your fraud service.
Right. And then I think the other part about how secure they are becomes part of your business strategy and your policies and your culture as well. So that your starting point about no PII into environments that we don't ring fence, etc. And I guess the other really dangerous thing for everyone to take away is criminals are well aware that AI is right through your businesses and that your staff are building really, really nice vectors for them to enter, breach their accounts. So again, we are the weak link. Breach their accounts of their personal accounts that don't have multi-factor potentially, don't have strong passwords, don't have governance, and they're using those as entry points to your business to get at the data. We manufacture really nice entry points, but again, that comes from, in my opinion, a lot of the leadership and the culture around embracing it rather than resisting it.
I think in many ways the AI conversation actually helps you boost the security conversation because your data is under threat already, particularly if you're carrying that personal detail. So when leadership teams start thinking about AI, it often goes to the security component. And think back to the strategy conversation that we're having earlier on. Okay, I want to unlock value X through AI. Then you're going to start looking at your data, you're going to start looking at the integration of your systems, and then security is going to become a component of that. Because unfortunately today, all of our data is under threat because it's so valuable to the people out there. So I think in many ways, I totally agree with everything that you said in relation to it creates the conversation, and it's being utilized anyway, so it's probably more exposed. But even bringing that AI conversation is going to uplift the security conversation in your various boardrooms, and that's only going to be a healthy thing in terms of you're now really beginning to understand your blast areas, where's your data, how disparate are your systems, and then that's got to be resolved as well as bringing the data sets together to unlock the capability.
Yeah,
So I
and
think
we've
it's a
seen
healthy thing.
3 really big hacks
Yeah.
in the last couple of weeks.
Daily.
But the AI itself actually traversing out of its
Yeah.
sandbox
Yeah.
into other places, creating message rooms where the agents can share between them how they did it so that they can repeat it. So there's a lot of stuff that we're learning at the moment that we weren't actually aware that our AI models were able to do. And from those sorts of missteps and challenges and problems, we actually learn better ways to create security, better ways to create, places that our data is going to be, curated in the right way.
Yeah. I think
We have a question over here, so I'll just...
Hi everyone, Bettina McMahon, Health Direct Australia and Syndicate 65. What's the biggest mistake a CEO could make right now in relation to this?
Thanks for clarifying that, Bettina. Aaron, do you want to respond?
Well, I think the biggest mistake is to not do something about it, not have it part of your strategy. There's, like we've just said, people are using it. AI is being used by your staff, and you need to be accepting the fact that that is a tool that's going to enhance them, enhance your organisation, and make sure and help you be more effective. So make it as part of your strategy. Make sure that when you're thinking about AI, the underlying problems around your connected data, making sure that you're getting value beyond just writing a nice email or creating a lovely PowerPoint slide, is that you're actually getting value out of that data. And the benefit of it is it's bringing the ability to get your data and make decisions more effectively, more faster than what you could 12 months ago or 10 years ago. So ignoring it is going to be the biggest mistake.
And I think that there was a survey recently, I can't remember who did it, but organisations where the CEO actually owned the AI strategy and was hands-on were getting better revenue gains out of the work that they were doing and better return on investment on the AI spend. I'll have to find it to let people know exactly who did that survey.
Can everyone give a big round of applause to our panellists today? Thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much, Robbie.
Well done, Warren. Well, good discussion. All right, now we're going to shift to our table conversations once again, and we have the odd and even number tables. So if we can get those questions up on screen, please. All right, for the odd number tables, question 1 is where could you reduce manual work by connecting systems and data? And for the even tables, how could you build role-based practical AI skills for your team? Over to you. 2 minutes to go on the table conversations. One more minute. One more minute, and then we're going to hear the perspectives. Okay, everyone, let's close off those conversations. If I can bring your attention back to me at the front, please. Thank you. So can I have a volunteer from one of the odd tables to just share what you discussed on your table? Where could you reduce manual work by connecting systems and data? Someone from one of the odd tables, please. Yep, down the front here, thank you.
Yeah, cheers. So there's a number of areas we've found, particularly with customer service, traditionally got some very manual processes interfacing directly with customers. In our world, that's typically hospitals, very complicated billing process. So we've been able to use it to automate and frankly take a lot of cost out of our business, or said another way, deal with imposed cost cuts and let the team hang on by becoming more efficient. So the other area is in automatic usage marking after surgery as part of the billing process as well. So a lot of the mechanical manual steps lend themselves quite nicely to AI, we've found.
Round of applause. Now let's look at the even number. Someone want to put up their hand from one of the even tables around the second question? How could you build role-based practical AI skills for your team? Who wants to take the floor? Oh, so good, down the front. Thank you.
Look, all I wanted to say is one of the tools that I've started using that I think is an absolute game changer is using Whisperflow, connecting a microphone to your computer and just instead of typing, just dictating and then you can dictate straight into the AI. And just I found the time saved across our team by just taking into the habit of using Whisperflow daily is just a game changer.
Another round of applause. Sorry if my voice comes in too heavy. I used to be a bingo caller, can you believe it or not? Legs 11, all the ones. Thank you. All right, now we're getting up to one of the last sessions of the day, and this person, Claire de Carteret, is the Managing Director of APAC of Gallup. If you don't know Gallup, they have some extensive research, and Claire's going to take you through some extensive research right now. Then we're going to sit down and I'm going to pick the brain of Claire around the current workplace wellbeing challenges that many organisations are facing. So can everyone please give a big round of applause for Claire to come up on stage.
Thank you. Hello everyone, can you hear me okay? Great, okay, I'm going to start by asking you a question.
I'd like you to reflect, imagine your life is a ladder, where 10, the very top of the ladder, is the best possible life that you imagine for yourself, and 0 at the bottom of the ladder is the worst possible life that you can imagine for yourself. Sounds awful. I'm not going to ask you to share this, but write down, where do you stand on life's ladder today? 10 being your best possible life, 0 being the worst possible life you can imagine. Where do you stand on that ladder today? Have a think about that. Now I want you to project yourself into 5 years' time, again answering the same question. In 5 years' time, if 10 was my best possible life and 0 was my worst possible life, where would I be standing in 5 years' time? Write that down for yourself as well. So if you are 7 on life's ladder today and 8 or higher in 5 years' time, you're what we define as thriving in life. If you are 4 or below today and 4 or below tomorrow or in 5 years' time, you're suffering. And we can debrief on that if you like over lunch. I'm going to tell you a bit more about how important this Cantrell scale is, the self-anchoring scale. I don't think I need to make the case around how productivity and human flourishing move together. And we've talked about it today, but this same scale that I just had you answer, this is what it looks like for Australia. Over the last decade, you can see we're at a decade low for thriving. So there are more people suffering or struggling every year in Australia. And can you see how that correlates to productivity? So we say productivity isn't everything, but actually it is everything to a life well lived, which is Gallup's definition of well-being, a life well lived. Someone asked us today to think about time well spent on earth. I wanted to add to that. So let me make 2 really macro big cases for why measuring the emotional economy in our workplaces is absolutely critical and why it gives us a perspective that traditional measures of prosperity just cannot. So the first example I want to give is GDP per capita in Egypt. And you can see here, relatively stable. At the time of the Arab uprisings, look at what was happening with thriving, with net thriving. That same scale that I just asked you all to respond to, that's what we were measuring here. And we were measuring it over the years. People were not seeing things getting better. Another example, UK GDP per capita, the Brexit vote. Oh, we've lost a line here on this slide. Let me see if it gets it there. There we go. So you can see GDP per capita, relatively stable, if not improving. At the time of the Brexit vote, look at what was happening with thriving, well-being. So that same scale that we all answered, the Cantrell scale, is a measure really of hope for the future. The idea that tomorrow or 5 years' time will be better than today. And when we have the absence of that, when we don't see things getting better, human nature is that we agitate, we disrupt, there's social unrest. Now, this applies not only at a country level and a global level where we study at Gallup, but also in teams, in organisations. So my first big takeaway here is, are you measuring your emotional economy? Because traditional measures of prosperity, EBITDA, turnover, they're not going to show us the full picture of how people are feeling and therefore how productive they can be. At Gallup, we call it the leadership blind spot, that perspective that leaders don't always look at as forensically as they look at some of those traditional measures. And Dr. Daniel Kahneman, who is a Gallup senior scientist, he won a Nobel laureate in the year 2001. It was significant because he was the first outside of his field. He was a psychologist and he won in the field of economics. And he was able to show that humankind are 70% emotional in our decisions that we make. Now, other behavioural economists have gone on to say it's more like 90%, and some say it's even 100%, that our emotional self is driving the car and our passenger or our co-pilot is the rational self that is justifying every decision we make. If you don't believe me, how many of you recently bought something that you just don't need? We make decisions based on emotions, where we work, who we marry, what car we drive, how it makes us feel. And I speak about work because at Gallup we're forensic about studying life at work and the impact of work on a life well lived. And we believe that when people have meaningful work to do, they can make a contribution, that in actual fact that impacts their overall life well-being, their life evaluation, how they think about their future, and how they feel about their sense of purpose. So speaking of work, every year, Gallup, as part of our world poll, we release a report called the State of the Global Workplace Report. It came out in April this year. You may have consumed this report. One of the things that you'll notice here is when we measure engagement, engagement has dropped. Engagement is the emotional connection that people have with their workplace. So it's not just the rational satisfaction, it's that discretionary effort, it's them acting and feeling and innovating, behaving like shareholders, and of course delighting our customers. So engagement is going down. You can see where we are here at number 5. We had a 2 percentage point drop from one year to this year. And that, in such a huge data lake, is really significant. We're right now just nudging average. We used to have an engagement advantage in Australia. Most people are languishing at work. Sorry, I thought I'd come up here and do a bit more of the good news. We've had a lot of the alarming news. The biggest area where we've seen this drop is in the manager demographic. Manager, anyone with a people manager title or designation. So anyone that has a direct report. I imagine everyone here in this room, we're leaders, we're also managers of people, and now agentic workforces as well. But manager, the shrinking perks of being a manager is actually quite alarming to us, because everybody needs a great coach. Everybody needs a manager who helps them see their potential, remove barriers, apply their strengths to make their contribution, and really coach them to develop. Give them fast feedback. That's where we get higher productivity, higher engagement. And it's a local phenomenon. Ever heard that statistic? People join an organisation but they leave a manager? Please raise your hand if you've ever had a bad boss. Miserable, isn't it? And it's not like we leave that at home. It impacts the way we snap at our significant other or the children or the dog. You know, you carry that with you all day long. So managers, how do we professionalise this role of being a people manager and make it attractive once again? Because managers are stressed. They've got a lot on their plate. Suddenly we're asking them to manage wellbeing outcomes, push performance, but also demonstrate care, not push too far so that people have psychosocial risk. And now they're managing remote hybrid workforces, AI transformation, among many other complexities. I think The Economist said leaders and managers are managing the most messy materials on earth, people. So this is what it looks like in Australia. You can see that drop from 23% to 21% in engagement. What that means is that less than a quarter of our workforces are thriving at work. They don't see it getting better. They're languishing, they're ambivalent. They may or may not be good performers, but they're working for themselves. They're not necessarily working for our company. They're working for themselves, and if something better comes along at the right time, because most of the Aussies don't think now's a good time to find a new job, but if something better comes along, they will make the switch, and that costs us money. So engagement, employee engagement, we need to do better. Imagine what that could be if 50% of our workforce were thriving. I will caveat this is a representative sample of Australia's working population. We take this sample every year in almost every country in the world, only 3 we can't go into. So probably in your organisations that number looks a lot higher. But as a representative sample, this is where it is. Now, we also want to measure optimism. Is now a good time to find a job? We know when people think it's a good time to find a job, they feel like they've got options. There's energy, there's mobility, people are moving. We talked about that a little bit earlier when it came to COVID and keeping people where they were. We had a dramatic drop from 2024 to 2025 results that were released this year in 26. So a 12-point drop in optimism around the job market. I don't know if many people here are on TikTok. I'm not, my children are, but there's a whole side of TikTok called WorkTok. And there's a viral hashtag called job hugging. Have you come across this concept of job hugging? It's like, just hang on to your job, keep it safe, don't do anything to disrupt, you just got to stay put. But that in itself doesn't sound very innovative, creative, challenging. It's just hanging on. There's also things like hashtag lazy girl jobs, hashtag bare minimum Mondays. You've all heard of the quiet quitting. There's almost like a bit of a workplace revolution that's occurring at the moment. So now's not a good time to find a job. And at the same time, we're reporting higher stress than ever before. You can see 49% of Aussies say they experienced a lot of stress yesterday. So we measure negative emotions, we also measure positive emotions. Stress is on the rise almost at the same time as engagement's going down. So this is a bit of a turning point. We've got an opportunity. We're still doing pretty well in Australia. You know, we've got some of the highest thriving in the world, although it's at a decade low. We're still on average with engagement, although it's dropping. People don't think it's a good time to get a job, but it's still relatively high compared to other countries. So we're still there, but it is something that we need to really think about as leaders today. So my third big takeaway here, so the first one was, are you measuring the emotional economy? The second one was, are we supporting managers? Managers are absolutely critical. Gallup's found that 70% of workplace experience is directly impacted by the manager, your local manager. And the third one here is, so what do people need? Well, Gallup studied what they need from work, and these are the 12 conditions required. Now, you'll notice here that these are all about the employee. There's nothing about the company. So it's not advocacy, would you recommend me? It's not intent to stay, how long are you going to stay with me? It's more about, what do you need to do your best work? What do you need to feel heard, connected, cared about and developed so that you can be engaged and productive? So this is the Q12. You might have also come across this construct. It's highly predictive of productivity and performance. So really, it's the conditions required for high performance. So that was a lot. I think the takeaways, we can ask more questions in the next part, and I know Cookie's going to come up here and probably grill me right now. But hope is a powerful strategy for culture. Managers need support, and are you measuring what matters to your people? Thank you.
All right. Okay, Claire, let's take a seat. You know how you were talking about, taking stress home and yelling at the dog?
Yes.
I wonder what Barnaby's.
Oh, Barnaby.
Won't go there. Anyway, everyone, yes, Claire and I have been having this conversation for a long period of time because CUP is built on workplace culture and getting, to understand make sure that humans thrive in everyday work. Now, your report says that 4 in 5 employees are disengaged or not fully engaged. From your research, what extent is that a people problem or a leadership and work design problem in your eyes?
So work design is absolutely critical. I think we all agree that the way we're working is not working. We can see that in the data. So work design needs to be addressed. But the number one lever to do that is leaders. Leaders focused on people, focused on the right things, leading hopeful outcomes, that strong vision for the future is going to be absolutely the unlock when it comes to people feeling engaged and productive.
I remember at the start, Paul said hope's not a strategy. Okay. another part of your big research is what is the number one thing that employees are wanting from their leaders right now?
Yes, there are 4 needs of followers, and the number one is hope.
So
Far and
define
away.
what hope looks like in practice and how does it translate into higher performance and healthier workplaces from your perspective?
Yeah, excellent. So I'll start by saying Gallup conducted a big leadership study, flipped it on its head, looking at it from the perspective of what followers need. So what followers want from leaders rather than leading from the top. The number one need is hope, and then it's followed by trust, stability, and compassion. So compassion, it speaks for itself. Stability, what stays the same? What can we count on? Stability of leadership. Trust also speaks for itself. Hope is defined as ideas and energy for the future, and the belief that we've got the resources and agency to create that. So hope alone is not a strategy, but hope is when it's a vision, when it's a path forward, is a really powerful lever specifically to engagement, thriving, and longevity with a company. So people stay longer when they can see that vision. To really break it down super practically for leaders in the room, hope is goals, plans, and energy around that. So what does it look like? I think as leaders, we always need to be talking about what happens when we get there. Where are we going? What happens when we get there? What does it look like? It's going to be better. That will keep people on the journey with us. It's when they're not clearly seeing that or hearing that or feeling that they leave or they languish.
I've got 2 examples to share right now. One, I was on the ferry not long ago, and I was sitting next to an old colleague who works in media. Let's say it's with one of the big television networks, who have just gone through their 5th or maybe 6th restructure, redundancy. They've had multiple CEOs. And she goes, Cookie, I don't even know where our business is going. And I don't even know what I'm supposed to be doing as a middle manager to encourage my staff. That's one use case. The second use case is the beautiful panel that we did recently, which we did live stream. And we can send around a link to this because I think it is important for everyone to watch that live stream as well. But we had Medibank on the panel. Now, I don't know if you've been following Medibank, but they've gone through a total work redesign around how they improve their employees and how they make their employees thrive with their well-being. Now, they've got a bigger use case, right? They want to be seen as the number one well-being workplace in the country because they offer workplace well-being initiatives. But what they've been able to do based off this is they've been able to create the 4-day work week. Now, I know everyone's going to go, no, don't want the 4-day work week. I get that. But we were joking over there that maybe that's where the AI agentic teams can work on that 5th day if you wanted to. But what I love about that was they took and guided their employees on that journey around what we're doing. They surveyed their employees around what were the bottlenecks that are keeping you from thriving. They then worked on the plan to reduce that capacity and load so they could open up the door of a 4-day work week. What does that mean for your business? It could be new learning and growth opportunities for your employees, new innovation days, or like what does that 5th day look like in your ecosystem? That led from the CEO down and they guided the process and the plan of how they were going to get there. Now, are they perfect? Probably not. But that's the hope that they drove from the senior leadership team all the way down. Mic drop.
Can I add one thing to that?
Go nuts.
Gallup research shows that only 12% of employees strongly agree that their leadership has got a plan for the future. So we all know we've got a plan, but are we communicating it effectively, not just once, multiple times, again and again, reinforcing where we're going, what that plan is. Just because we've got that plan doesn't mean it's really cascading down to where it operates.
Claire, do you believe that we can have a highly productive organisation without having a highly engaged workforce?
Not sustainably. I think most of us here would know that when we are not well, we can't work the same way. So we need to be thriving to do our best work. Wellbeing's the power behind performance. When you are well, you do well, you work well. So possibly for a short period of time, but certainly not sustainably.
All right. If you were sitting in the audience as a CEO today, Claire, what would worry you most about the state of the Australian workforce and our ability to lift productivity?
Engagement and specifically the engagement of people managers, leaders and people managers. Because when we don't have great managers, then we can't have high-performing teams. We can't have highly connected, thriving teams. We see it in athleticism. The best athletic teams, sporting teams, have got the best coach. And then, unfortunately, in workplaces, people become managers because either they've been around the longest, which is unfortunate, but tenure does play in, or they were an excellent individual contributor. Now we put them in a manager role. Suddenly they've got to manage humans who have needs and emotions and need to be developed and given feedback and shown care. So I think if we can really find one place to intervene right now, it would be what support, what scaffolding are we giving to anyone with people manager positions? Because they've also got their own deliverables.
Can I ask about the younger generation coming into our workplace? Your stats say that they don't actually want to become a leader. Is that true?
Correct, yeah. It's less desirable. There were 6 big pivots. We did a study of 1.4 million employees. We asked them what they want from their workplace, and there were 6 big pivots, and one of them was they want a coach, not a boss, so a shift from bossing to coaching. So help me define the outcomes, get out of my way, let me do my job as an adult, you know, so that parental, parent-child relationship, style of management, it's out. They don't want that. They're yearning for development, hungry for growth, want to get to that next role before they've even started. Anyone done any hiring manager interviews recently with younger generation? Yeah, they're really keen to see that progression, but less desirable. They don't want to be a manager.
You also said something in the Brisbane that I want to pick on, and I think you said it in the Brisbane Connect that we were there. You said something around redefining the word work.
Yes.
What do you want to call it instead of work?
Yes. So if you look up the word work in the dictionary, it's very negative. Words associated with toil, drudgery, labour.
Who wants to work
exertion.
in that environment? Sorry, can't even say work.
Right. I think starting a global movement, you can come up with a better word. For now, the only better word I can think of is contribution. But if you've got another idea, please tell me. But I think it's that reframing of work. What is it? It's connection, it's contribution, it's working on hard things and having development spikes through that. It's having a sense of purpose for many people. One of the world poll findings that Gallup came out with in the first decade of doing a 100-year commitment to this world poll was that everyone in the world wants a good job, regardless of where they are and what their definition of a good job was. For some, it's about food, shelter, security, Maslow's hierarchy, and for others, it's much more self-actualizing. It's about significance and legacy, but everybody wants a good job.
For the CEOs in the room, what would you encourage them to do on Monday to try and boost engagement with their staff?
Have conversations. The art and the science of a meaningful conversation is getting lost, and engagement is a contact sport. It requires connection in the way of conversations. The formula, to be exact, is 1 meaningful conversation a week with each of our direct reports. And that seems like a lot. A meaningful conversation doesn't have to be long. It can be 1 minute. How are you? How's work? How's your job? What do you need from me? What support do you need? 3 quick questions. And the cadence and the frequency of a meaningful conversation makes that more fluent and easier. You know, a lot of people say to me, oh, I can't even have a meaningful conversation with my significant other. It's transactional. It's who's taking the kids, doing this and that. How do you have a meaningful conversation? Well, that is the unlock. When someone sits with us and gives us just that focus and it's meaningful, then the fluency is there. That's why the frequency of 1 a week is really important. Can't just happen once a year. can't just happen once every couple of months. It has to be frequent because that's where the trust is built, the hope, the care, all of those juicy kind of productivity unlocks happen when we have a connection.
Build that capacity and then have more meaningful human interaction. Who's heard of love languages? Put your hand up, come on, who's heard of love languages? I feel like now we've all got our own connection languages. Don't give me a call, leave a message. I don't even check my inbox anymore. Send me a Slack, WhatsApp. We've bloody complicated everything. Let's just get back to what true human connection is all about. And that means taking the time. I don't know if you've heard of a deep listening expert called Oscar Trimboli. Have you heard of him? Anyway, if you haven't heard of Oscar, go to his website. You can do a deep listening quiz. I'm the rude interrupter. I will come in and solve your conversation before you even need to talk. But he shared with me that, we talk at 150 words a minute, but we think at 900 words a minute, which means that first 150 words isn't what your employees are trying to get out. Make sure you ask them questions. Tell me more. Why is that so? The other little tip he told me, he goes, Cookie, did you know listen and silent have the same letters in it? I went, shit, no, didn't know that. These little simple things is what's going to actually move the needle for our productivity, trust, engagement, all the rest of the things that we're talking about today. Can everyone give a bigger round of applause for Claire today? Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing I will state is that, at Cuppa and with Enterprise Works, we're on an absolute mission to help as many organisations as possible reframe how they can actually tackle this inside your business. I don't know if you saw Darren's little sheet here, but if you pick that up, down the bottom there is a QR code, and that QR code is a complimentary research briefing with your SLT, in which we can help move that needle inside your business as well with all the conversations that have been developed here today. We're also building out a beautiful network, including other CEO Institute members that can absolutely help transform what you need inside your business. Now we're up to the final moment of today, and I'd like to welcome up this conversation, is a view from the frontier, OpenAI and time under tension. So I'd like to welcome up Kevin Park. Kevin Park is Director of Partnerships Australia and New Zealand at OpenAI, where he helps organisations across ANZ adopt and scale OpenAI technologies. He brings deep experience across global SaaS and cloud businesses with a track record of driving growth, regional expansion and commercial executions across APAC. Following Kevin will be Tim, and Tim O'Neill is a co-founder of Time Under Tension, Australia's first agency built entirely around generative AI, helping brands like AGL, Queensland Rail actually put AI to work, not just talk about it. Tim spent his whole career at the pointy end of new technology, and today he's here to share what he's learned about where generative AI is really taking business and how to get ahead of it instead of playing catch up. Please welcome Tim O'Neill and also Kevin Park. Oh, you got this. Does that work?
Let's try. Let's see if this works. Yes, it does.
Look at you.
There you go. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Kevin from OpenAI. I had the pleasure of meeting like-minded folks from the CEO Institute in Brisbane a couple of weeks ago, and some of the conversations that I've had since then, during that event and today, really iterate again how fast things are moving, but we're all having the same challenges. Hopefully today I can share some insights from OpenAI's perspective that gives you a little bit of comfort that you're not alone in that journey, but also a little bit of tips and insights, building on some of the great conversation from earlier today on what the next step is that you can take as a leader in your organizations. So I think we've all seen like a tremendous amount of change with AI. I think the biggest change that I've personally felt from AI is that in Brisbane, Darren introduced me as the cool kids. And if you told me 20 years ago that a short, skinny Asian dude is now called cool in this world, that's kind of what AI's done for my life anyway. So the pace of change has meant that the model releases have compressed from 15 months to 6 weeks. Now, I wake up every morning really scared of opening up my Slack. because I genuinely don't know what else has changed, what other news headlines, what is that next frontier, and what does that look like? So if someone from OpenAI is feeling that way, we're certainly not alone. Not only that, a couple of months ago, maybe a month and a half ago, our CEO, Sam Altman, made an appearance at the CommBank AI Day. He had a fireside with Matt Common, and even Sam said, I'm actually not using the tools at my disposal to its fullest potential. So if the CEO of OpenAI says that, again, it's not the technology, it's how you deploy it. The technology is already way far ahead of the value that we can capture out of it. This is really a conversation about how do you, as leaders, take that technology and infuse it into your everyday workflows, make your people AI native, bet on the right big bets to demonstrate ROI, and then scale responsibly thereafter. And the stats prove this as well. So we're seeing within our customer base, 20% of organizations are capturing 74% of the economic value out of AI. Very simply put, there's just a small subset of customers, organizations, that have done something right, that have unlocked something, they've found a secret sauce that accelerates them ahead of everyone else in this AI transformation journey. So what is it that this 20% has done? What do they know that sets them apart and giving them a competitive advantage at the moment? And today, in the very short time that I have today, I was keen to share a story from one of those organizations in that 20%. And the one that I have the best access to is OpenAI. So I was in San Francisco 3 weeks ago for a customer EBC, and this is what it looked like walking the halls with humanoids and drones and agents doing all the heavy lifting for you. No, that's not true at all. Sorry to disappoint you. If you got really excited about that, then this presentation is going to become really boring really quickly, because that is not what my presentation is about. Maybe a little bit of that for Tim, I'll leave. But the reality is, walking the halls of San Francisco at OpenAI, we're having the same problems. You know, I'm standing in front of a meeting room that I've booked with a standoff because the person's refusing to get out. We spend 10 minutes of every call saying, you're on mute, mate. Are you sharing the screen? Like, it's because we are all exactly the same humans that require some stimulus, some input, something to break out of habit. Again, going back to the comment that Sam Altman made about him not using the technology to its full potential. It is really about a human change management and people consulting kind of conversation. And you might find that, you know, is that in OpenAI's interest to say that? No, it's just the truth. It's not, the technology is there, but it's hard to actually deploy it and get value. So again, I've made the disclaimer, it's going to get boring, but these are the answers of what did OpenAI do to get that value as much as possible in the shortest amount of time that we've had since the advent of generative AI. It comes down to these 4 really practical things. AI fluency, you know, in terms of the AI literacy and future-proofing of your organization for the wave that's coming, right? So again, like, there's a lot of conversation about, hey, we've seen the individual productivity increase 30%, 20%, 50%, whatever it may be. We're not really seeing the ROI of AI, but do you really have a choice at the moment? Like, has anyone in the last 20 years gone back and gone, what is the ROI of Excel? Like, it is intuitively lived experience. You know this is a better way of doing things because that's the direction you're heading, right? So again, that is a given. You need to build that AI literacy. You need to connect those AI tools and access to all the important data and the context and the intelligence that you have within your organization. You have to make sure it's owned at the CEO level and down. Make sure there are clear owners. We had an early morning conversation, I think it was Monica who mentioned that you need to give someone actual full-time role to focus on this transformation. Because again, it's a transformation. Can't be a side gig, can't be a part-time job. And then move beyond that kind of AI literacy and fluency and focus on a set of big bets that are going to drive that biggest ROI in your organization. Some of the ones that Dean mentioned across those four functional areas, for example. So I'm going to go into really quickly, touch on each one of these. Start with ordinary work. The only thing I would say here, again, is just getting access to everyone and making sure that everyone in your organization is what we say AI pilled. They've got to have that moment they go, oh, I can actually do this with AI. That is the moment that I've sensed in myself a habitual change, personal change. That's when you go AI first before I go back to the old way of doing things. And most recently for me, that was vendor setup. As part of my role, I support some events like this, and there's a vendor relationship that needs to be set up in procurement tools that is an absolute nightmare. And now with computer use, where our tools allow the agent to just use a browser and log into any system that you have authorization to attend, it did all of that without me leaving the surface of ChatGPT. That was a moment where I go, okay, now I know that is the behavior that I'm going to drive every time a similar task or similar complex task comes. So imagine your organization each of them having that light bulb moment and then start changing their behavior. Then you're starting accelerating your workforce and orders of magnitude in terms of productivity. Secondly, we talked a lot about connecting data, right? It's a given. If ChatGPT or Claude or whatever can give you these answers based on our model training data, what if it had access to all the intelligence of your organization, right? So your CRM, ERP, your data warehouses, your reporting, your emails, all those things absolutely need to be connected to really unlock that productivity. And for me, meeting notes, right? So if we're in a Zoom, Google, like these days, I just maniacally make sure before start of every meeting, is this being recorded and transcribed so that that feeds into all the decisions, all the judgment, all the context that we had, that rich context is there ready, available for me to tap into for the next output. And I think the last mile gap that is left is kind of in-person meetings, right? Where a lot of goodness happens in those in-person meetings, but I'm still undecided whether it's rude or not to kind of get a recorder out and to transcribe that, but I think we will probably get there. I don't know, that's my prediction. But also making sure your operating model reflects that, reflects the priority from C-level down to have clear owners and clear goals around AI adoption and AI literacy. You can have a central team that looks after the overall program of work across the organization. But what we've done is actually we've had an AI kind of adoption lead in each of the functions. So including go-to-market, where I sit, there is a team that's focused just on use cases for go-to-market teams. What does the sales team need in terms of an agent? What's the next thing that we can build? Across finance, HR, having that functional kind of laser focus to distill that corporate strategy down to that level is super important as well. And then I won't go into this in detail. Obviously, we talked a lot this morning about tokens being consumed is not value. We completely agree with that. We're laser focused on different metrics that measure successful outcomes of agent interaction. So do you accept the output and it doesn't just, you don't need to go reprompt 5 times to get it right, because that's wastage. So those are kind of leading metrics all the way down to value metrics. We're really focused on providing more mechanisms and frameworks around making that easy for you to measure the ROI. Now, one thing I would say that a lot of people surprisingly miss is just baseline it before you start anything. Across all of it, make sure you're baselining, okay, how many people does it take for that supply chain workflow end to end, and how much time? Like being laser focused and not just taking a random survey from 10 years ago as gospel, but going deep into it, building that baseline to make sure that you get the ROI return from AI is super important, because that gives you the trust to invest in the next use cases. And lastly, prioritizing specific use cases, right? Talked about that. We have a set way to articulate this, which is to say, be prepared to disappoint the backlog to back your winners. A lot of organizations are funding 100 different POCs and hoping one sticks. We recently had the CTO of CBA, Rodrigo, do an event with us last week with Amazon, and he shared that he's expecting 80% of the OpenAI token consumption to go to 7 use cases that they've identified, right? So he's got that broader access, but he's picking the winners, right? The ones that's going to really move the needle. As Dean mentioned, the ones that the ROI is going to be super clear for everyone to see. So you've got to do both. You've got to do the bottom-up AI literacy, but pick your winners as well. An example locally is Lion Nathan, is a very operationally heavy kind of organization that went with OpenAI, and they were able to increase their forecast accuracy for their B1 and spirits, doubling it since launching it. And that has real material bottom line impact. So picking those specific use cases absolutely helps. And so as a result of doing this internally at OpenAI, we need to update this because we don't really say Codex anymore, but ChatGPT Work and Codex. The agentic adoption across all the functions is at 92%. You might be asking, what are the 8% doing at OpenAI? I have the same question. It's a question for another day. And what that has meant is that we are really starting to get closer to this world, I would say. And a gentleman here mentioned voice, Whisperflow, and all of that. And if you just try ChatGPT Voice these days, the experience that has improved in the last few weeks, I would say it's quite amazing. I think we're really getting to that kind of Jarvis from Iron Man territory. And Tim might share this. He shared a really nice LinkedIn post about this. Going for a walk, just on your phone, that phone having access to all your work data, and just giving it instructions and it flying back in real time, kind of spitballing ideas with you and executing in the background, that is very close. And I think that will do wonders for the productivity of the country. So we have, in Australia, all these customers that are on that journey to be that 20%. You'd be surprised to know that we have got 2 million businesses on OpenAI. That's on top of the 1 billion weekly active users that we already have on ChatGPT. A lot of people, again, are surprised that our enterprise revenue is going to exceed our consumer revenue by the end of this year. So we are seeing that broad adoption in the enterprise space. And Time Under Tension, who we're sponsoring this event together with, is one of those firms that have helped a number of these organizations get to that journey. And we're very honored and privileged to be sharing the stage with Time Under Tension. So pass over to you, Tim.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. Good morning, everybody. I'm Tim. A lot of you have met my co-founder, Jason, and I give his apologies. He's very busy thriving, Claire. He's sailing a boat in the Caribbean today, so he's thriving, but I'm very happy to be here instead of him. Actually, I would probably rather be here than on that boat, to be honest. A lot of conversation today, a lot of people have been talking about AI agents, and what I'm going to be talking about is, well, what does that mean? And there's a lot of definitions and misdefinitions around what an AI agent is. I think if we did a poll and asked people, what do you think an agent is, we'd get 140 different responses. So what I'm going to talk about is our perspective, how we categorize AI agents, and then an example in each of these different categories. And then also, how would you do that? How would you bring that agent to life within your organization? So I'm not going to go through them all now. I'm just going to go through these one at a time. But starting with chatbot agents, which have been around for the last 3 years. So ChatGPT obviously kind of pioneered this. ChatGPT now, this is an example. If I hit play, we should get the video playing. Yep. Of what is actually called, literally, it's a ChatGPT agent. And these are the kind of things that anybody in your team can build for themselves. They don't need to be software developers. You can just use prompting to bring these to life, as long as your people are on the right plan. And the magic of these is, like in this example, it's connected to a few different external data sources. This one is connected to an email, Outlook, and it's scanning the inbox on a daily basis on a scheduled task, and it's finding any inquiries that need triaging, and then it's connecting to the CRM and putting those and enriching the CRM. This happens, as I said, on a daily basis, really easy for your teams with the right capabilities and the right setup to do these for themselves. One of the company's CEO Institute members who I think are here today, I'm not sure where Bevan is, but Novata Lease Australia, so we worked with them to help build capability within their team to build agents such as this, and these are some stats from the results that they had. So this is kind of low-hanging fruit. This is really quite easy to do. You can do it, as I said, with the capabilities of your existing team. And some of the ways that you can do that and you can enable that is, number one, having a culture of learning, access to the right tools, data security and connectivity to, in that case, Outlook and HubSpot in a kind of governed manner. And then something else that we've heard a lot about today is your responsibilities as leaders and the people, your 2ICs, is modeling the behavior of building an agent and experimentation and actually letting your team have permission to lean in and try building these for themselves. The next category of agents is what we call a co-work agents. And in ChatGPT, the software just recently was renamed from Codex to ChatGPT Work. And this is desktop software, and this is an example for a client that we built, Unity Water. They're a water utility in Queensland. And this is just sort of showing some of the amazing capabilities of the desktop software in particular, the co-working agents. In this example, we're taking a very, very complicated engineering plan of a water treatment plant and then asking ChatGPT in the desktop app to build a 3D visualization of that water plant. So it built that bit of software. It wasn't done, that was sped up. It took maybe an hour to build that. It probably did use some tokens to do that. But you can see we have an interactive 3D visualization of that plant. This is actually a demo that Jason built for Unity Water, and he showed it to the leadership team there, and about 20 minutes later, the CEO's like, I want you to meet with all our engineers at 5 o'clock on Friday because they need to see this. And I think Jason was very nervous about that, but they were very excited about the new capabilities. The way that you as businesses can go about kind of getting into these kind of slightly more difficult use cases is identifying and prioritizing the challenges and the opportunities. We've actually heard a bit about this today, is identifying what's a workflow, what's something that's a bottleneck within the company that could be unlocked with this. This is not software development. This is something, again, your slightly more technical savvy staff can do by themselves, but it's really narrowing that funnel. Actually, I like the slide that Kevin had, which was almost literally a funnel of identifying the challenges and opportunities, going, how can AI help with that? And then narrowing that down to just a really small handful of priorities that you're going to go after. The next category is workflow agents, and this is actually something that we have also heard quite a bit about today. And this is a more complicated process, which is probably integrating with a few different legacy software platforms and the like. What I'm going to, sort of the example here is with Queensland Rail. We've been building this software platform for them over the last two and a half years. Started with a proof of concept, built to a pilot, and now this is being used by 1,000 staff and contractors at Queensland Rail on a daily basis. And what this does is there's about 4,000 safety and environmental management policies and standards and procedures that are spread across a bunch of different network drives, and the subject matter expert just wants to get an answer, like what are the rules for working at heights in this tunnel. And the old way of doing it was they'd have to go, they'd just ask someone, what document do I need to look in? That person hopefully wasn't on holiday that day. They'd go and dig through the 4,000 documents, find a PDF, scroll to page 30, and then try and find the answer. Now, what we've built is effectively a ChatGPT for those 4,000 documents. And in fact, we're using OpenAI technology behind the scenes to power it. And this is saving, there's about 50 policy searches a day. And every single one of those saves, let's say it's 1 hour of work, maybe it's 2 hours of work. So there's a massive cumulative benefit to the productivity of Queensland Rail. Another example of a workflow agent, and just to reiterate, these are workflows where they're complicated. You can't do them out of the box with something like ChatGPT, but you can build on top of the ChatGPT brains and build software on top that will coordinate it. This is for a client, ScotPack, who are a non-bank lender. And the problem that they wanted to solve was, this is, you ask the CEO what are the 1, 2, and 3 high value processes that would unlock kind of growth for the business. And this was one of those, is when they're onboarding a new customer, so they lend to businesses, they want to effectively guarantee or de-risk that loan by looking at the debtor list. So the debtor list is an Excel spreadsheet of companies that owe money to that business. So they had a manual process. They had about 30 people in a room manually going through spreadsheets and seeing, is that a real company? Basically, that's what they want to check. Is there any risk that they've just made that spreadsheet up? And this is super high volume. So there's about 5,000 of these a week. We reduced the time through this workflow agent from 20 minutes to 2 minutes per check. And the outcome of that is a great productivity benefit for the business. But what actually I'm kind of more excited about is the customer experience benefit. Because if you're asking to borrow some money from ScotPack, this is getting in the way of you getting the money. You waiting for a week for the approval when you really just want that money in your bank account so you can go and buy, do that fit out that you need or whatever it might be. So this is speeding up that approval process so your CSAT scores go through the roof as well. So again, this comes back to the prioritization and these different kind of categories. I'm getting into sort of the more sophisticated and complicated ones as we've been going through. This is again where you come back to the prioritization. That is much more effort to build than the earlier example of the inbox triage, but it's also a really, really important use case and meaningful value to ScotPack if they can unlock that, which they did. There was a pulse survey that everyone took part in before, and the last question I think it was what is your concern? What is your biggest concern about AI? And about half the room said we're worried that we're moving too slowly. On the desk, everybody's got a copy of this flyer. And what I'd encourage you to do over lunch or take it with you and do it back at the office is score your company on this little scorecard. This is using a Microsoft kind of research methodology. We've shortened it down. You don't have to do the 5-hour interview. Just answer these 10 questions. From the organisational lens, how ready are you to adopt AI? And then from your people, so not you personally, but looking at the average of your people, combine those scores and then chart yourself on the matrix here about, are you stalled, are you blocked agency, are you unclaimed? And then where do you want to be in 12 months? And I am pretty sure most companies will say, we want to be further up to the right. And if that's you, if you fit into that category, you want to sort of accelerate your use of AI, we'd love to speak to you. We're putting together a group of CEO Institute members who want to move faster. We're going to combine those 10 companies into a group, and there'll be collaboration and comparing notes about everybody's AI journey. So we would love to hear from you. Scan the QR code if you'd like to learn more. And with that, thank you very much.
Of course, I have to adjust everything because I'm really short. Hi, everyone. I'm all that's standing between you and lunch. I will try to make this as quick as possible. I do have the unenviable task of making closing remarks with a frog in my throat. Hang on. My name, for those of you who don't know me, Anne Massey. I chair Syndicate 62 and 41. Members are scattered all over the place. Only the two best syndicates in the CEO Institute, but I am seriously not biased. Just let me add that plug. Now, I'm going to need glasses for this. As I was listening today, I found myself writing notes. In fact, they're everywhere, all over my paper. Not just about what each speaker said, but about the thread that connected them all. How were we going to pull this together? I'm going to try. Richard Wynne opened by challenging us to rethink productivity, not as another business metric, but as one of the defining leadership challenges of our time. And I think that's come through very clearly. Paul Bloxham, as always brilliant, reminded us why productivity matters, not just for our own businesses, but for Australia's future. And it's up to business to change that, because tax reform, regulations, IR and competition are not changing any time in a hurry by the government. Darren challenged us to think differently about where productivity is really won and lost, not by asking people to do more, but by rethinking how work itself gets done. Dean reminded us that strategy only creates value when it becomes execution. And I learnt a new word, token economics. Loved it. I'm going to use that one. Claire brought us back to people and culture and interviewed by our MC, Cookie, because we realised that productivity is experienced by people long before it appears in any report. Warren then brought together the fabulous Culture Forbes, Aaron, Jason and Morris as a panel, and did a massive job on making it a practical discussion about what all of this means for us as leaders. And then finally, Tim and Kevin did a great presentation and shared insights on AI maturity, on great use cases and prioritisation and how important it is. What did all those messages mean? The message was really clear from my perspective. The future of work isn't something that just happens to us. It's something we need to actively shape as leaders. When you step back today, I think we've all been challenged to rethink about productivity differently. There were different speakers, different perspectives, with one clear message. Don't chase productivity, design for it. And I'm going to repeat that. Don't chase productivity, design for it. Productivity is an outcome. It's the outcome of how well we've designed the way work gets done. Your leadership isn't about asking people to work harder. It's about understanding how value is created and then improving the way work gets done so people, technology and processes create more value together. One conversation I had recently really stayed with me. It was with the founder of an AI consultancy. We actually spent less time talking about AI and more time talking about the work itself. Because until we understand how value is created through the work we do, we really don't know where AI belongs. Once we understand the work, we'll know what needs to improve. And then AI becomes a capability we integrate where it genuinely adds value. It helps lift productivity, it doesn't create it on its own, because ultimately this lands with us as leaders. Often the biggest barrier can be mindset. You need to understand where the value is created in the work your teams do and how it's delivered. If I leave you with 3 things to put on your to-do list from this morning. First, understand. Better understand how the work that creates value really gets done in your organisation. Where is it that that value is created, and where's it getting stuck, or where can it be changed? Second, simplify. Don't do everything at once. This was a massive morning full of fabulous information. Do not let it overwhelm you. Do one thing. Remove one thing that no longer adds value when you understand the work. It could be several meetings, it could be one report, or it could be a process. But your job is to make it easier for people to do their best work that creates value. And third is integrate. Integrate AI where it genuinely strengthens the work, not because it's available, but because you've understood the work first. Before I finish, please let me acknowledge and thank a few people. Richard and the amazing CEO team for bringing us together today. Thank you, guys. Great morning. Cookie for guiding today's conversations and interviewing Claire. How good as an MC is he? Thank you, Cookie. Warren for leading today's panel discussion. Thank you so much. To all of our speakers, our panellists, our sponsors, and partners for challenging our thinking and generously sharing their experience and expertise and time. Amazing. Thank you. And finally, to all of you, your time is precious. Your time means something, and we really thank you for attending, participating, and being present here today. Thank you all. Thank you. So, tomorrow morning, we walk back into work, or maybe this afternoon we walk back into work. We'll have priorities, we'll have challenges, we'll have opportunities. And every decision we make as leaders shapes those work conditions. Conditions for clarity or complexity, for momentum or friction, for capacity or overload. I leave you with this. Great work isn't something we ask of people, it's something we design for. And when we do, productivity follows. Thank you.